Welcome in. This is the Premier Mindset by Premier Performance LLC. I'm your host, Trent Mailer, LCSW, and this is episode 16. There's information in our show notes, whether that be information about the episode itself or information about where to find certain things like research or visuals, all that kind of stuff. That's a great place to find it. So if there is something you're looking for specifically, I would check there first just to see if you can find it. If there is something you would like, I will either post it in social media or on the show notes or on both. So if you are asking for things, if there are some things out there that you're looking for, just keep an eye on that first. There are videos of the episodes on YouTube and Spotify, and I will share clips on the social media accounts so you can get the bite-sized pieces of the things we're talking about if you don't have time for the long-form episodes such as these podcast episodes. The podcast itself is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you would like it somewhere else, just let me know. I will get it up there as well, but that seems to be the place where most people get their stuff, so that's where it is right now. Please leave a review, like us, follow us, favorite, subscribe, all that good stuff to make sure you get the content as it comes out. Make sure you get the notifications when things are happening, and also it just helps us out, gives us feedback, and it helps us just spread our awareness and kind of grow the engagement that we're getting from putting this stuff out there. So if you could do any of that, that would be awesome. We would really appreciate that. That always goes a long way. There's a lot of people that could get help from this episode today. We are talking about parenting. So anyone who's struggling with parenting, whether that's dealing with, their parents in their life and how that's going, or parenting themselves with their own children, it could be helpful. Whether it's just trying to understand yourself a little bit better and how parenting has affected you, both giving and receiving parenting, that could be helpful as well. If this kind of touches home for anything or anyone in your life that it kind of reminds you of, that's always a good idea to kind of send it their way and see if they get some help from it. However, it's not a replacement for therapy or medical treatment if those are things that are needed. It's purely educational. My goal is just to spread awareness and put these things out there in ways that helps you guys just do better with all this stuff in general and live a life that's a little more aligned with the Premier Performance goal of just finding success in what we're doing and reaching that peak performance in all areas of our life, both career, personally, professionally, relationally, and everything in between. I make it a point with that to give you guys actionable tools to find success in your life. And it's all evidence-based. It's not just random things that were thrown at the wall. This is stuff that's all been researched in various ways, and I'm making sure to give it to you in that way because I want to make sure that if you're taking time out of your day to do stuff, that it works and that there is backing behind it. And it's not just some random thing. So if you have any questions, concerns, anything you want me to cover more, anything that you want me to go into more detail with, anything at all, you can reach out to me in a lot of different ways, and I'd love to hear from you guys. The first way is through email, which is tmailer@premierperformancereno.com. My last name is spelled Mahler. You can text or call me directly at 775-561-0056. We have the Instagram and the TikTok with the same name, which is Premier_Performance_Reno. And then we have the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page, which is both the same name as well, Premier Performance LLC. Hit us up on all of these different accounts, follow us, jump on board. I'll be putting different things out on all this stuff. So I just want to make sure you guys get it all. So lock in, subscribe, follow us, all that good stuff. Make sure you don't miss out on any of this. And let's get into some stuff with parenting. First, we'll start with our brain activity, and then we'll get deeper into the actual topic. But the brain activity is always related. So our brain activity this week is called Parenting Impact. I want you to reflect on how you were parented and how it has impacted you as an individual and you in relationships. So keep in mind how certain things that you have dealt with through how your parents dealt with parenting and how that has led to changes or differences in your life or how you look at things, how you handle stuff, how you handle situations, stressors, difficulties, who you lean on, who you don't lean on, how you handle relationships, because at the end of the day, parents are our first relationship. That's our first chance at building a relationship and what it looks like. So you do see a lot of crossover of things with parenting and with relationships in our life, whether they're friendships or romantic relationships. This is kind of some of the basis of what Freud was talking about with his theories about parents and how people view them and all that kind of stuff in their life. So if you are interested in that, you can go back to that, but we'll cover some of this stuff today anyways. So I want you to reflect on that and just take a moment, maybe write it down, maybe jot a couple notes to yourself, but just really reflect on that impact, just how it has impacted you, We don't always sit down and really think about this stuff. Sometimes we're so caught up in the go, go, go that we're just going through every day and we're not realizing how things are impacting us. So I want to take a moment for you guys to recognize that and feel that and see what you think. The second step of this is if you have kids, so if you parent yourself like you are parenting children yourself, I want you to reflect on how becoming a parent has changed your view of parenting in general. Maybe it stayed exactly the same, and the way that you felt about it growing up is the same way you feel about it now while you're doing it. And maybe it's different. Maybe now that you're on the other side of it, you're looking at these things in much different lights and you're seeing things from your own childhood that you're understanding in different ways too. So I want you guys just to explore that a little bit, have an idea of how that has changed things. And it could be a nice way to just reflect on where we're at and how the things we've gone through up to this point have brought us to where we are now. So give it a shot, see what you think. Reflection's always good. A lot of the brain activities are kind of reflection based because a lot of mindfulness is pretty helpful in a lot of ways. There's a lot of mindfulness based tools. So this is why I want you guys to recognize that impact, because recognition is the first step. If we don't realize how something is impacting us, it's really hard to manage it or deal with it. Let's jump in. Do you ever feel lost? Like you have no idea what you're doing and you're worrying if you're going to mess up your kid? Unfortunately, these are very common worries and they happen pretty often, and you're not alone with it. Parenting presents a wide array of common difficulties, encompassing everything from managing challenging behaviors, balancing personal needs with family obligations, to navigating the ever-evolving landscape of technology and social media. Specific challenges can include dealing with tantrums, sibling rivalry, picky eating habits, as well as addressing issues like shyness, disobedience, and even aggression. And then on top of it, we get financial stress, difficulty finding time for oneself, and issues coping with emotional and psychological tolls of parenting are all significant hurdles that we also have to cross as parents. Parenting comes with a lot of different difficulties, a lot of different struggles, and it's really hard to do all by yourself. I mean, there's a reason that people talk so much about single parents and how difficult that is, because it really is a big challenge. This stuff is hard. There's a lot that goes into parenting. There's a lot to be aware of. So we got to be aware of these things and how difficult it can be, and just the fact that this is normal, that it's okay that this stuff is difficult. The problem is there's so many people that try and keep this into themselves and deal with it on their own that they run into more and more problems instead of getting the help they need to make it easier, because it doesn't have to always just be hard. There's a saying that I think really hits home with a lot of this, which is it takes a village. And that's really true with this. It does take a village to raise a kid, to parent, because there's so much going on. Parenting is demanding, and seeking help is not a sign of weakness. We need help from other people. And this is kind of how this stuff went most of human history. We'd have the village doing stuff together. It was very community based. There was a lot of neighbors helping out, people helping out in certain situations, taking over at certain times when parents had to do certain things, and everything in between, because there's so much to juggle, there's so much going on. But we've also seen the more modern our society has become, the more isolated we've become too. The more shut off we are, the less likely we are to ask for help. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It's different everywhere. And there are some times that we ask for too much help sometimes, where we're kind of putting off taking care of our kids ourselves and putting it on other people because we just don't want to. And that's an issue by itself as well. But I think the bigger side of this is that there's not enough people asking for the help they need. There's too many people trying to take it all on by themselves, and it doesn't always work. Seeking support allows parents to manage stress, to improve mental and emotional well-being, and ultimately become better caregivers for their children. And all of these aspects are going to help with that relationship with the kids too, because they're going to see that stuff. I mean, especially when they're really young, they're little sponges. They kind of absorb everything. It's about recognizing that no one can do it all alone, and that building a strong support system is beneficial for both parents and children. And you're teaching your kids from a very young age that asking for help is important and we need to do it, and we can't do everything all by ourselves. Even if we try, it doesn't go well. And this is the key with the premier performance in general, that if you're trying to do everything by yourself all the time, you're not going to find the success you're looking for. You're going to have to lean on somebody at some point. You're going to have to get some help. So be willing to get that help. Ask for help if you need it. Be willing to let other people in and get them involved in the situation as well. We can't do it all by ourselves, and there are people out there that want to help. Let's just let them. Asking for help with parenting is crucial for a parent's well-being and the healthy development of their children. It allows parents to manage the demands of raising children more effectively. It prevents burnout, which helps with the relationship down the road, and models healthy behavior for their kids. Seeking support also fosters a sense of community and can improve relationships with both the child and other adults, which can help later on with the child making connections with other people, because we're kind of building up that social network for them and showing them what's safe and what's not. That's a lot of what's happening when children are young. With this stuff, there's a lot of different ways to build trust with our children. And once we get past that aspect of asking for help and getting what we need to manage these things, it goes back to building that relationship with our kids and how that's going to look. And it does change over time. When they're young versus when they're teens versus when they're adults, it all changes. I mean, they're at different levels of life, and because of that, they go through things differently, and we got to interact with them differently too, even if we're still feeling like we're in the same spot. So let's talk a little bit about building relationships with your kids that you can stand. I know there's a lot of stuff out there that can cause problems and it starts blowing up and we don't like it. Feels like we can't deal with it. It feels overwhelming and it feels like, parenting is more of a chore or a responsibility than it does feel like a pleasure or an enjoyment. And I want to get back to that enjoyment, back to just growing these beautiful relationships and creating great memories and having things go well. Some things you can focus on when they're young is cuddling, talking, playing, singing, and reading to them. These kind of activities can really start building that attunement, building that attachment, which will help. Everyday nurturing interactions strengthen attachment and stimulate brain development. As babies venture out into their world, remain present and be a safe base for them so they can explore, take a little bit of risks, put themselves outside that comfort zone, but still come back and feel like they have that home base, that safe base to come back to lean on. That's that support that we can provide. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, letting them go out and kind of explore and get out away from that safe base a little bit. But we got to encourage them to trust that we will be there to support them and protect them, no matter who they are, no matter how they are. We want to kind of give them that unconditional acceptance and positive regard. So no matter what they do, even if we're not happy about it, even if it's not going well, we want to still accept them for who they are, and still have positive feelings about them, towards them. We can still deal with issues. We can still teach them things. We can still help them with things. But if we don't have that piece, it starts to create other problems that become a lot harder to deal with. And I see that in my work every day. I have a lot of kids that come in that struggle with things because parents are having a tough time, and some of that stuff spills onto the kid, and the kid takes it on as feeling like they're a burden or they're a problem, and they start isolating, they start shutting down, they start hiding pieces of themselves. I think one of the more heartbreaking side of these things is when parents are having a rough time and they mention that a kid's behavior is annoying. And I know it seems very surface level, like there's not much to it, of like just stop that thing. The thing is, a lot of kids take it on as feeling like them themselves are annoying and that they got to stop. So then they start hiding things. They're not letting themselves be their genuine self. And that creates a lot of problems down the line, because that connects back to our self-care, to our relationships, to trauma, all sorts of things in between, because we're losing that connection to ourselves and who we are. And I'm not saying you're going to get traumatized or all that stuff by that comment. It's that you're setting yourself up for this position that when something happens later, it could hit you and impact you in a much more difficult way than you think. So we got to kind of give them that safe base. We got to continue to build things up by interacting with them, by having physical touch and building that attunement through all this. And once they get to that age of like teenager, it does change a little bit, because if we try and cuddle a teenager, I think we all know how that's going to go. Sometimes it works out, but I think a lot of times they're going to say, "Get away from me. I want to do my own thing. Leave me alone." So with teenagers, we got to ask open-ended questions. Let them kind of guide the conversation. If you give a yes or no kind of question, they're going to just choose that and stick with that. You're not going to get anything, and it's going to be frustrating for both of you. We also got to connect in everyday moments. Connect in moments such as listening to the radio, or teaching them how to drive, or talking about a project they're working on at school. Connect on things that they're doing, things that are going on. Be aware of their present moment, not just so much talking about like what you used to do or how much fun it could be to do this thing, but connect with what's happening. And give specific encouragement. Let them know that they're doing good things. Like, I'm really proud of you for this grade you got, or you did an awesome job on this project, or you played really well in that soccer match. Whatever it is, we just want to give specific encouragement to what they're doing and keep pushing them forward, because they're trying to build independence when they're teenagers. That's where they are developmentally. So they're trying to create the sense of identity of who they are and what they're doing and what they could do for themselves. This is also why they tend to lean more on peers than they do on their parents and their family, because they're trying to build things out for themselves. It's not going to be forever. It's not where they are. This is just where they are right now. So we got to let them have that space. We got to let them figure some of these things out. We got to show teens that we're trustworthy too, and that you recognize when you make a mistake. So if you do have a problem or you do something wrong, you got to own it and you got to tell them. They will respect it. They will appreciate that. If we try and seem like we're just the perfect parents and we've never done anything wrong, they're not going to like that. We have to make it feel like we're human. We have to make it feel like we get it and that maybe been there before, so they can trust us and come to us when they need something. And with that, we got to give those teens opportunities to be independent. That's their goal. That's what they're striving for. And if you don't give it to them, they're going to rebel for it. So it's better to give them that opportunity in a way that's safe and controlled than to have them try and seek it out on their own. It's not going to work well. And in good times or bad, whether things are working out great, exactly how we want, or everything's falling apart, we have to be a team. If it starts becoming a thing of pointing fingers and saying it's your fault or this isn't good enough or, whatever, it's going to go bad. It's going to start spiraling and it's going to create problems. And if we push this stuff too far, sometimes we get to these points of having these conversations of, we can either do it with our kids and try and figure it out, or our kids are going to do it without us and they're going to do the same thing anyways. And I think one of those is going to be a whole lot more dangerous, a whole lot more risky than the other one. So as hard as it might be, especially when things are falling apart, we got to be on a team together and try and figure this out of how do we get to the other side? How do we figure this thing out together? And you'll get more buy-in from them too doing that way. Try and keep that stuff in mind, the different levels of building that trust with relationships with our children and how different it is when they're young versus teenagers. And as adults, it kind of goes back to more like most of your adult friendships or relationships in your life. You're just treating them like another person like that. Some of that comes a little more easier. I think the harder ones is the teenager one, because we want to keep doing the stuff when they're young. And the adult one kind of comes a little easier. It's just going through that transition that they are actually an adult now. We're going to zoom out a little bit and we're going to focus on just children's development in general. And it's going to kind of go around in a lot of different ways because I want to hit on a few different topics all at once. This is all going to be based in research, so it'll be a few different studies. And the reason for that is I just want to put this out there for people to understand how our children are working in different situations and different things that we can do, and it's all backed by science. One of the biggest things that I see is we got to get our kids used to things as early as you can while keeping it safe. And this is with as many things that you can think about with life in general. The quicker we get them facing things and dealing with stuff and building up coping strategies to manage things, the better they're going to handle it later. So this could be something like bacteria. Don't try and make everything super sanitary all the time. Yes, we want to keep things clean. No, we don't want things getting to a point of like risky infections and all that kind of stuff. But we have to let them expose themselves to bacteria. It's going to help build up their immune system, especially when they're young. There's studies out there showing that if we can take our kids outside and be in nature and in the environment, they actually have less likelihood of having allergies. Same thing with being around cats or dogs while they're young. They have less likelihood of having allergies towards those things later, because you're building up the immune system to manage this stuff. If you keep something away and isolate it from it and then introduce it later, the kid may not have the built-in system in their immune system to manage that thing, causing a big reaction, getting an allergic reaction, and that's where things can get scary. It's not saying that allergic reactions are only caused by not introducing these things early, but we have a better chance of these things being managed better by the body if we introduce them young and let their bodies kind of adjust to these things, because there's a lot of growth happening in those very young years. Another piece of that is noise. A lot of times we try and keep things very quiet for babies while they're sleeping and doing what they're doing, and it makes perfect sense. But if we don't give them a chance to manage noise while they're sleeping or whatever they're doing, they're going to be pretty, overstimulated to that stuff pretty often. And unfortunately, I've seen more and more of that lately, where there's kids coming in that they're overstimulated by everything. They have to wear headphones at school. They can't just hear the chatter of people nearby because it's just too much. And sometimes we need to do those things to help manage it, but we can manage some of these things from an early age, just help them get used to it, help them develop in a way that's going to be successful with these things going on. Another piece of that is other people. We can kind of combat some of the shyness right off the bat by getting them involved with other people and having them meet people and get used to just connecting with people, because it's going to create this idea that other people are safe. And that's what we want. That's going to help them get out of their shell and be more their genuine self as they're growing up and getting older. And another one is also food. Introducing them to food as they can, once that's safe for them. Have them taste different things, try different things, see what things they like, help themselves just get used to stuff. If we're very picky with what we're giving them, they're probably going to keep that picky behavior up as they get older and they're choosing food. And I'm sure a lot of you have struggled with just picky eating habits with kids and how difficult that can be. So try and get them used to things as early as you can. Let's balance that line of safety as well. We got to be careful with this stuff. We don't want to go too far with it, but let's try and get that out there and try and help them adjust with it all. Going into some studies, a consistent bedtime linked with better child emotion and behavioral regulation. A consistent bedtime may be more important to a child's ability to control their emotions and behavior than the duration or quality of their sleep, according to a new publication. That goes back to that circadian rhythm, and the consistency of going to sleep at a certain time every night is actually more important than the duration or the quality of their sleep. We really want to choose a bedtime and just stick to it and just have that be their time. It's going to be better for them in the long run. It's going to help build them up so they can manage their own behavior better too. A national poll was done looking at parents and how they feel about managing their children's anger. And 7 in 10 parents say they will sometimes set a bad example for managing anger. 2 in 5 worry their child's anger will cause problems. Some parents may find it challenging to help their kids manage intense emotions. 1 in 7 think their child gets angrier than peers of the same age, and 4 in 10 say their child has experienced negative consequences when angry, a new national poll suggests. So there's a lot of parents out there worried about managing anger and dealing with these really intense emotions because there is no real playbook for this stuff. You just kind of have the kid and you're figuring it out along the way when they're feeling things and how to deal with that. Especially if you struggle yourself with managing anger, it's going to be kind of hard to help them with theirs. To help their child avoid getting angry or frustrated, parents say they often try to ensure they get enough sleep and exercise, help identify and avoid triggers, and avoid overscheduling. Those are things that have been beneficial. We want to manage the self-care, keep the vulnerabilities low, so they can handle more and they can go through more stuff because they're just little humans just like us. And we want to help identify and avoid the triggers that's causing some of this stuff to come out. Helping them recognize when they're getting angry and why they're getting angry so they can better deal with it. And then one of those other things is avoiding overscheduling, because we have too much going on. It's going to just build stuff up and it's very easy for things to blow up. Children's anger also often stems from feelings of fear or disappointment that they lack the skills to express calmly. Sometimes we just got to help them understand what they're feeling, sit with them in that darkness a little bit, and then help them explain it, help them work through it. And as you do it a couple times, they're going to pick up on it and start doing it themselves. You'd be surprised at how quickly kids can pick things up if we just give them the right tools and show them how to do it. Another thing that will help with bedtime, like we were talking about a little bit ago, is that screen-free bedtime boosts toddlers' sleep. A world's first randomized controlled trial of toddler screen time shows that removing screen time an hour before bed improves the quality of toddler sleep. So we want to make sure to take away any screens, give them time to kind of relax, cool down, set themselves up for sleep. It's going to go better, and they actually get better sleep by doing that. 1 in 4 parents say their child can't go to sleep because they're worried or anxious. 1 in 5 parents give young children melatonin to help with bedtime, while 1 in 3 stay in the room until their child falls asleep, the poll suggests. 1 in 4 parents describe getting their young child to bed as difficult, and these parents are less likely to have a bedtime routine. They're more likely to leave on a video or a TV show and more likely to stay with their child until they're asleep. So with that in mind, we want to try and do kind of the opposite of some of these things. We want to have a good set bedtime routine. We want to make sure to turn off the screens and have that all off and slowing down at least an hour before bed. And while sometimes we need to stay nearby until they do fall asleep, help them with a difficult time, we want to slowly inch away from that best we can, because we want them to be able to soothe and kind of go to sleep on their own. We don't want to have that dependence created of I have to be in the room for them to go to sleep. Think of how exhausting that's going to be moving forward. So we don't want to build that habit up now, even though there are some nights we're going to have to. Another big one is physical activity. Good physical fitness from childhood protects mental health. A recent study found that good physical fitness from childhood to adolescence is linked to better health in adolescence. So we want to build up that physical fitness. That could be, joining sports teams, playing soccer, playing baseball, all this kind of stuff. It could be just playing outside together and having fun, enjoying stuff. But we want to get them active and get that energy out. It's not going to lead to good things if we let that energy just build up in the background. It's going to lead to probably some racing thoughts and give them some struggle. So we got to help them get that out. It's going to help protect them later. It's going to build up good habits that they can continue as they move through their life and move forward in their life. And it is going to lead to better outcomes as well. So this one scares parents, but I think it's a really important one for us to talk about. We are too safe with our kids. All work, no independent play is the cause of children's declining mental health. A new study suggests the rise in mental health disorders in children and teens is attributed to a decline over decades in opportunities for them to play, roam, and engage in activities independent of direct oversight and control by adults. Although it's well intended, adults' drive to guide and protect children has deprived them of the independence they need for mental health, contributing to record levels of anxiety, depression, and suicide among young people. Parents today are regularly subject to messages about the dangers that might befall unsupervised children and the value of high achievement in school, but they hear little of the countervailing messages that if children are to grow up well-adjusted, they need ever-increasing opportunities for independent activity, including self-directed play and meaningful contributions to family and community life, which are signs that they are trusted, responsible, and capable. They need to feel they can deal effectively with the real world, not just the world of school. That will build them up, that will help give them the confidence and the self-esteem to manage things in their life. And when situations go bad, because they will, they won't look at it and wilt. They'll look at it, they'll puff their chest out, and they'll go deal with it. And that's going to be better. We need to help get the kids out there and go do more things. This is the safest time in recent human history, but we often look at all of the dangers because of everything we're aware of. Because we are aware of more dangers than we ever have been too. But we got to recognize the difficulties that come from that if we do put too much control over it and we're too supervised. Yes, we should teach kids to be safe, and we do need to keep eyes out on them and see what's happening. But we also got to teach them how to keep themselves safe and trust them to go do things. Because that trust and that feeling of capability and responsibility is going to help them do better as individuals as they develop and as they grow up. So let's try and put them out there. Let's let them go get that independent play. And if it's terrifying, start small. We don't have to jump straight to just letting them do something really intense. Start with something small. But we can't keep trying to suffocate them with control. It's not going to work, and it's not going to lead to anything good. And we've already been seeing that in the science. So let's make the changes now, and let's not keep going through these problems. Another study touches on this as well, which is risky play exercises an ancestral need to push limits. Anthropologists tout the benefits of jungle gyms, monkey bars for child development. Since their invention in the 1920s, jungle gyms and monkey bars have become both fixtures of playgrounds and symbols of childhood injury that anxious caretakers want removed. Anthropologists mark 100 years of the iconic playground equipment by arguing that risky play exercises a biological need passed on from apes and early humans for children to independently test and expand their physical and cognitive abilities in a context in which injury is possible but avoidable. One of the ironies of modern parenting is that our children have never been physically safer, and yet we have never been more worried about them. We need to consider the potential longer-term benefits of allowing them to engage in play where there is some level of risk so they can overcome challenges on their own and learn from it when it doesn't work out. It's a really beneficial thing to learn those things. So we got to put them out there, and this risky play, this independent work is really important to their development, and we can't be afraid of it, even if it is scary. If we kind of zoom out and look at how we can support kids, it does change things too. Supported youth become supportive adults, researchers find in a new study. The study suggests that Mexican origin adolescents' physiology and emotional support from family and friends makes them more likely to be helpful and have empathy for others. This study was focused on Mexican origin adolescents, but with it, it does kind of cross over to other ethnicities as well. It's really just about if we support them, they will continue to do that same support for others. So we got to be aware of how we're supporting them and what we're doing, because the things we're doing for them is going to be how they treat the world later too. So be wary of giving them that support and having that empathy for them, because they will learn how to do that for others too. Another piece is early exposure to diverse faces helps babies overcome prejudices later in life. Babies who have more diverse social contacts in the first years of their life can get over their prejudices more easily by the age of 17, according to new research. So that diversity really helps people understand different things in different ways. And if we expose to this stuff early on, it starts to create differences of how we're viewing this stuff and how it's impacting us, especially as prejudices do show up and they do come up later. And this isn't necessarily bad. I mean, this is just what our brain does. Our brain likes to categorize. So helping it understand the diversity and the spectrum of things can be a helpful thing for later, because we don't want to teach kids to just have black and white thinking with most things. It doesn't really work out well. This is another one that's going to be a little controversial, but it is backed by research, so I do think we got to talk about it. Banning friendships can backfire. Moms who meddle make bad behavior worse. Study on maternal disapproval of children's friends shows unforeseen consequences of well-intended interference. And it is well-intended, and the study is specifically focusing on the mother or maternal disapproval. So, it probably does have some correlation with paternal as well, but a lot of these studies focus on moms because they do a lot more of the child support, child care than dads do most of the time. Bad behavior often occurs away from home, leading parents to blame and limit contact with peers. However, a new study shows that banning friendships can backfire at worsening behavior instead of improving it. When moms disapprove of their kids' friends in an effort to curb misbehavior, it often alienates the child from their peers, exacerbating the very issues they aim to prevent. Meddling in friendships can harm a child's social standing and lead to greater adjustment difficulties. Focus on maintaining positive relationships with children, because warmth and support can be effective buffers against troublesome peer pressure, potentially disrupting the downward spiral of peer problems and adjustment difficulties. That's really important, because we think we are trying to save them by keeping them away from this stuff, but it doesn't work that way. We actually got to help them deal with it. And you got to think about this in terms of the bigger picture of life. We can't help our kids deal with things by just getting them away from struggles. We have to help them deal with the struggle so they can manage it. And then when it happens later in life, they're ready to go and they're able to handle it, and it doesn't cause big problems for them. If we don't, it ends up leading them to isolation and issues, and they can't handle the troublesome behavior and the troublesome peer pressure. We just got to support them in a way where they feel like they can manage it, and then having that good, healthy relationship with them, like we talked about earlier, can help improve communication, and we can talk through these things and help them learn some lessons from it all too. The researchers also suggest that parents can create opportunities for constructive peer engagement in supervised settings and encourage participation in adult-sponsored clubs and activities, which potentially limit deviant behavior. So we still can limit stuff, but we can't try and tell them not to do things. It just doesn't work well. I mean, as people in general, as humans, when we get told not to do things, our first initial reaction is wanting to do that thing. This also happens with our kids. So we got to keep this in mind, and we got to try and limit as we can, but we also got to try and teach them through it and help them through it, rather than try and protect them and save them from it. Going back to the relationship in general, parents who use humor have better relationships with their children, a study finds. In a pilot study, most people viewed humor as an effective parenting tool, and that a parent or caregiver's use of humor affected the quality of the relationship with their children. Among those whose parents used humor, the majority viewed their relationship with their parents and the way they were parented in a positive light. So, with your kids, try and use a little bit of humor. You don't have to be a stand-up comedian, you don't have to be great at it, but just have some fun, laugh a little bit. Don't take life so seriously, and enjoy that time with your kids. It's going to really make a difference. Parents' eating behavior influences how their children respond to food. This is a big one, and I think we overlook this a lot, and we don't think about it. We're just eating because we're just eating, and we're not thinking about how it's playing off for our kids. But young children often display similar eating behavior as their parents, with a parent's own eating style influencing how they feed their children as well. This is where a lot of conversations with eating habits go back to like genetics. And there is a genetic component to different things because of how things are working in the body and our desire for food and all that kind of stuff. But there is a big part of this. This goes back to nurture, which is we learn how to eat and we learn eating behaviors based on what we're seeing. because I mean that's how kids are raised. They learn from seeing. And when they see people in their life, like their parents eating a certain way, they're going to kind of mirror that behavior. They're going to do some of those things. So we got to be aware of that and be aware of how we're eating, because we could very easily pass down the eating habits that we have to them without even thinking about it. Another big one is getting teens to listen. How many of you have struggled feeling like you're banging your head on the wall dealing with your teenager? It's a very common thing. It happens all the time. And a study suggests the secret for getting teens to listen to unsolicited advice is if parents support their emerging adults' autonomy. The teens respond by tuning into their advice, whether they ask for it or not. And a new study may hold a secret for getting your teenager to listen, to appreciate that unsolicited advice. We need to help them recognize that that independence they're looking for can be theirs, and we got to help them get it. If we help them get it, and it's not saying just let them go be fully independent, do everything on their own, but it's like kind of letting them launch, letting them go do their things a little bit. They will be more willing to listen to what you're saying, even if they didn't ask for it. So if you do want them to hear the messages you're giving them, you got to help them be more independent. If you try and keep them really controlled, really locked down, they're not going to listen to anything you have to say because they're too busy just trying to break away from that grasp. We got to help boost them up and help them be supported as emerging adults, because that's where they're headed. And if we try and hold them back from that, it leads to bigger problems from them later. Another study that focused on the paternal side, the dad side involved with children, is that young children do better at school if their dads read and play with them. According to the research, dads who regularly drew, played, and read with their 3-year-olds helped their children do better at school by age 5. Dads being involved at age 5 also helped improve scores in 7-year-olds' key stage assessments. Mothers still tend to assume the primary carer role and therefore tend to do most of the child care. But if fathers actively engage in child care too, it significantly increases the likelihood of children getting better grades in primary school. This is why encouraging and supporting fathers to share child care with the mother from an early stage in the child's life is critical. We need a village, right? Like we went back to. And that also goes back to the idea of not having mom do everything. Dad needs to get involved too and do things on his side as well. And having that connection of both sides working and having that interaction in childcare does significantly help our children do better in school and do better developmentally. Active children are more resilient. The school year has hardly begun and the first exams are already approaching. The study wanted to determine whether physical activity makes children more resilient under laboratory-controlled circumstances, and the results showed that participants who got more than an hour of exercise per day, as the World Health Organization recommends, did in fact produce less cortisol in the stress task than the children who were less active. So we are more resilient if we are more active. That does help us out in a lot of ways. So we want to manage getting that physical activity however we can. And if we can code it in fun, it's going to be a whole lot easier for the kids to get into it, and they're going to probably want to do it even more than that 1 hour. So let's get them active, let's get them out there and see where it goes. A study examines the influence of longer family meals on children's eating behavior, and their experiment shows that children will eat significantly more fruits and vegetables if they are on average stay at the table for only 10 more minutes, 30 minutes in total if we think of the 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Separately, a survey found 91% of parents say their family is less stressed when they eat together. This idea of having family meals can help in 2 different ways. It's going to help with stress for the whole family altogether, and it is easier to keep kids at the table longer, which will naturally lead to more fruits and vegetables being eaten. Sometimes if we get into that argument of you need to eat that thing or you need to do this thing, we just get resistance. But if we tell them just sit at the table while we're here, we're just going to be here for like 10 more minutes, you might find them just starting to pick at things and eat a little bit of stuff while they're waiting because they just kind of have a little bit of boredom sit in, or just while they're doing it, they just start picking at stuff. It just happens. We do it naturally as adults too. Those family meals can really help out a lot, and that number's pretty high, 91%. I mean, that's almost, especially in the world of research, like getting anywhere above 90% is like kind of a home run. So if we can do that, that's going to really help out in a lot of ways too. Daily consistent parental reading in the first year of life improves infants' language scores. The study, which builds on well-established research of early language development in toddlers 12 months and older, found that the infants who received consistent daily reading of at least 1 book a day starting at 2 weeks of age demonstrated improved language scores as early as 9 months of age. The findings were published in December in the Journal of the American Board of Family Medicine. Another piece is that watching TV with your child can help their cognitive development. So this study focuses on the idea of spending that time with kids and watching TV together can be beneficial. And I wanted to put this in here because I want to point out the fact that screen time isn't bad. We just got to do it in a productive way. If we don't have any structure around it, things can become a little more harmful and not productive. But these things can lead to some really good stuff if we do it the right way too. Parenting teenage years. Our research showed that parenting can change a lot during the teenage years. Parents often express less warmth and affection, spend less time with their teens, and become more harsh in their discipline. Parents that were able to maintain positive parenting and involvement laid the foundation for a close relationship when their teens become children or become adults. This is big because a lot of times, because of that less warmth and affection and less time, the discipline becomes harsher because we're frustrated as parents. And if we can maintain that positive parenting attitude and just kind of giving them that space to be an emerging adult and try and figure out their own independence, when they do become an adult, that connection is going to come right back and they're going to be right back in our life in the way that we want them to, building that close relationship. This happens a lot with teens, and a lot of parents struggle with trying to pull them in and keep them close. Sometimes we got to let them wander off a little bit because they will come back if we let them. We just got to let them know we're there, keep that door open. Staying involved in teens' lives may look different than when they were younger, and it can be challenging to stay close with teens as they seek greater independence and autonomy. Based on the study's finding, they suggested activities like doing something together, like playing sports, bike riding, exercising, going for a walk, gaming, cooking, attending events, going out for a meal or dessert, working on a project together around the house, talking about what's going on at school, discussing what they want to do in the future, just kind of going with that idea that they have more independence, they can do more things, and then just treating them more like a friend and doing things with them and understanding who they are and what they want to get out of life, than trying to control where they're going and trying to push them in certain directions. We want to kind of let them lead it a little bit. And we can offer our advice, and going back to that idea of them taking that unsolicited advice, we just got to support that emerging adult piece, and they will listen to these things and they will trust the stuff we're telling them. But if we try and force them there, they won't. It kind of feels like backwards, but that's just how teenagers work, unfortunately. Further, adolescents who experience higher levels of parental warmth in the early teen years reported feeling more closeness and warmth with mothers and fathers when they were in their 20s. Parents should avoid harsh consequences in yelling at their teens and work to stay calm and consistent in upholding family rules. Adolescents want to feel respected and treated like adults. It's important to have clear reasons for family rules and consequences, and doing it together, it does work better. When appropriate, it's helpful to include those adolescents in decision-making about family rules, such as discussions to decide on reasonable curfew, punishments, consequences, because when parents can include their teens in these decisions, they are more likely to go along with what is decided. There's less resistance. So get them involved, do more things together, and let's see where that leads. It might lead to some pretty cool stuff. So this next one is big, and I do really want to talk about it because I think we don't realize the impact of this stuff, and I think because a lot of us have gone through it, we just assume it's totally normal and fine. And that idea of thinking of, I went through it and I was fine, so they can go through it and they'll be fine, is super flawed, and we really got to get away from it. We got to focus more on how stuff is working and the research that we're finding. Let's jump into it. Physical abuse is less likely when spanking is eliminated. When parents in countries worldwide use spanking as a behavior deterrent, their children are more likely to become a victim of physical abuse later in their life. The probability of physical abuse decreased by 14% when comparing children who were spanked, which was at 22%, versus those who were not, which is at 8%. So that's a pretty big difference. If your child has a 22% chance of being in a physically abusive relationship later in their life versus an 8% chance of a physically abusive relationship in their life, that is a really big difference in terms of possible life outcomes and how it can go. The reason for this is if we use spanking as a behavior deterrent, what we are teaching them is through our relationship, their first loving connection, that this is a part of a loving connection, that this is normal, physical, punishment. And because of that, it's easier to normalize that in their own head later on in life, when in a relationship, if physical abuse happens there too, that this is just part of it, that if I didn't do that thing, this wouldn't happen, because that's how we're doing spanking. That we spank them if they do something they shouldn't have done. So if they didn't do that thing, they wouldn't get spanked. And then they'll keep that with them and take it with it and say, well, I wouldn't have been hit by my partner if I didn't do that thing. If I just don't do that thing, I don't get hit. So it's real easy for them to fall into that physical abuse relationship. I know none of you guys want that for your kids, and there's better ways to do this stuff. I'm going to go over a book very shortly that has a lot of really great things you can use if you're having trouble parenting and holding consequences, because there is some good stuff in there. But we just got to look at the idea of spanking isn't helping. It is actually setting them up for some possible issues later, and we got to be very careful of that. And that might be controversial, but I mean, this is from the University of Michigan, and this stuff, like I said, is all backed by research. I'm not going to tell you guys things just for no reason. I'm telling you guys this stuff because it's been proven, and I want you guys to do something with it and make life easier for yourselves. This next one's a PSA on something that's not talked about enough, and it's kind of important in my mind because it's not talked about enough, and it's kind of skyrocketing. Study finds melatonin use soaring among youth. In a study published in April, researchers analyzed 25 melatonin gummy products and found that 22 contained different amounts of melatonin than the label indicated. One had more than 3 times the amount on the label. One had none at all. In addition, some melatonin supplements have been found to contain other concerning substances such as serotonin. This is big because this stuff isn't regulated by the FDA, so they can say anything on their labels and have any amount they want in there. So we don't know how much is actually in these things unless you're actually testing it, or you get it from a very specific place that you know is trusted. So we got to be very careful. You may not know how much you're taking when you're taking this stuff, but that's not even the biggest problem. Parents may not actually know what they are giving to their children when administering these supplements. Some scientists have also raised concerns that giving melatonin to young people whose brains and bodies are still developing could influence the timing of puberty onset. Melatonin is a hormone, so it does more than one thing. Just as like testosterone does more than one thing. There are a lot of things going on with melatonin that we don't think about. We just connect it to the idea of sleep. But melatonin, another thing that happens is with young people, they have melatonin running through their body almost all day long. And what that's doing is it's suppressing puberty. Once they go through puberty, melatonin is then only released a little more later in the day, ready for sleep and helping them go to bed. So if we are giving melatonin, we are messing with that natural system of creating melatonin in our body, especially because we don't know how much we're giving it, because a lot of these things aren't tested. And at the same time, if we get too much in there at the wrong time, you can actually delay the onset of puberty and mess with some of the aspects of that. And we got to be really careful with that. There's a lot of things we can do for sleep to help with that, like valerian root, sleepy time tea, different behavioral modifications, different things you can do with the environment. But if we get caught up just leaning on melatonin, it's going to probably lead to problems, and it's best just to avoid it. There are ways to do it that leads to good things, but especially with children, it might be best just to stay away from it unless you really want to dive into the research and understand the best way to do it. The few small-scale human studies that have looked into this have yielded inconsistent results. So we're still looking into this, trying to figure these things out, but this use of it is just soaring, and we really got to be careful with it, because it might be something we all look back on like 5-10 years from now and we're like, well, that was terrible, we should have never done that. Nearly 1 in 5 school-age children and preteens now take melatonin for sleep, and some parents routinely give the hormones to preschoolers, according to new research as well. So we're doing this all the time, and it's just getting handed out like candy. We got to be careful, and if you can do other things to get that sleep, it's going to be better. If we can't do anything else, it's the only thing that's working, we need sleep, we got to do what we got to do. But let's try and do other stuff. If you are having outbursts or issues at home, there are some good things you can do. What I was just talking about struggling with consequences, there's a book out there called 1-2-3 Magic. It's a great book. It's written by a child psychologist, and it's probably the book talked about the most by therapists for parenting. I've read it myself. It's a great book. It has a lot of really helpful, like comic book strip type chapters and stories that it goes through, and explanations of why the method works and how to use it, so you get a good feel of like real world examples, and it kind of explains the background of why it's helpful and what about it is helpful. So that's a great book to get, and we want to try that method. It's kind of a counting method of, 1's a warning, 2's a warning, 3 you get the consequences decided together. I'm not going to be able to summarize the whole book right here in the moment, but I just want to kind of give a sneak peek of it so you guys can go check it out. And another big part they talk about is the consistency of the group effort and keeping things the same as we're going through it, especially with the agreed upon consequences. If we have an agreed upon consequence, we have to stick to these things. And a big piece of this that I really want to touch on is that we can't give in to tantrums. If a kid is having a tantrum, your natural desire is going to want to be to stop it, to solve it. But if you give in to it, and it's not just a tantrum of them having a hard time, but it's like a tantrum of I want that thing, you're going to teach them that it works, that they can throw a tantrum and get what they want. And that might be cute, not too bad when they're like 2 or 3, but when they're 14, it's a whole different problem. And I have seen that. I have seen kids that have been given what they've wanted because they throw those tantrums, and they get older and older, and eventually they just aren't controlled, and it starts leading to bigger problems, and then police get involved because there's assaults and issues and problems, and it gets real rough. So try and start this stuff real early. The book goes really deep into it so you can understand why behind it, but you gotta not give in to those tantrums. You gotta show them that that's not going to work to get you what you want. That's not how we do it. We ask for what we want, and if we don't get it, sometimes we gotta manage that, because we gotta remind ourselves we're raising another person. There's going to be ups and downs. There's stages. They're going to learn stuff. Things are going to change. Certain things they're going to like at certain points. Other points they're not. I mean, we got to help give them that space. And sometimes, unfortunately, the best way kids learn is by touching that stove, even when you tell them that it's hot. We got to let them lead a little bit, especially as they get older. But we got to hold them to stuff and recognize that we are raising another human being, and we got to give them that freedom and room to be a human being, and keep in mind what would bother us and what we wouldn't want as well. If you are having issues with your kids, it's time to seek help for your kids professionally when you observe persistent, concerning behavior or emotional difficulties that significantly impact their well-being or daily functioning. And this can include also just the situation of the family as well. It also includes situations where the child's behavior is unsafe, where they express thoughts of self-harm or harming others, as early intervention is crucial for addressing mental health concerns and ensuring your child receives the support they need. And in all honesty, it's just easier and faster. If you wait for these things to really build up and turn into big problems, it just takes so much more time and work to get it done, and it's not worth it. It's best just to jump into these things early, kind of like the idea with the tantrums. Just deal with it early. Don't let it build up. It will turn into a bigger problem, and it will be harder to deal with, and it will take more time. I have done work with kids as young as 5, and catching things early, you can get some stuff done pretty quickly, and then they're just doing their thing, and issues might pop up later, and we can deal with those things then. But we got to just take our time and do what we got to do with the stuff and get the help if we need the help. Don't be afraid to reach out for it. It's not bad. And, if we're hesitant, you can ask me. I can give you guys some insight of what it may look like, or what you can go find, or what you might want to look for. So let me know. I'm here to help however I can for you guys. We also want to utilize self-care while parenting. We got to make time and find time for the stuff we need to do. So that might be waking up a little early. That might be staying up a little late. That might be finding time while the kid's taking a nap, whatever it is. We got to do what we needed to do, whether that's, exercise, self-care activities for ourselves, journaling, drawing, something that we enjoy for ourselves, like a face mask, reading a book. We got to make that time for ourselves. We can't just be caught up parenting the whole time. You're going to lose yourself in it, and you're going to get closer to burnout every day. It doesn't have to be perfect. We can do things even while we're doing stuff with the kids. Like, we can create like a reading time. Maybe we're all reading a book for like 30 minutes, and you feel like you got at least a little bit of time. You could do a workout while you're holding your baby, doing some squats. Be careful. Don't do anything that's like a balance issue that you might fall. We don't want to risk anything like that. But like, we can do some stuff while we are engaging in parenting itself. We can still take care of us. And sometimes we're going to have to go with the flow, whether that's of the child and what their daily routine's looking like when they're taking naps, when they're a little more entertained on their own, when they're doing stuff with other people, or we just got to schedule it best we can, whether it's around their school schedule or sports, whatever they got going on. We just want to go with it and try and get ourselves what we need while all this stuff is happening and we're going through the whirlwind of life. Recognition is the first step. There's a lot more in here with parenting, but if you guys are recognizing any issues with parenting, even if you're having a specific issue with parenting, get the help you need, even if it is just reaching out to me to let me know what's going on, because I can go deeper into things. If you have certain things that come up, you guys let me know. I can always shoot like a quick video to put out there for people of just like how to handle this thing. So if you have questions, if you have issues, let me know. Send it my way. I want to give you guys stuff to help. We just got to recognize when we're struggling. Share this episode to anyone who you think could benefit from it. Anyone that comes to mind while you're listening to this, send it their way. See what they think. See if they get anything out of it. If you are listening to this and you want your partner to listen to it too, because you guys are talking about parenting, get on the same page. Let's listen to it together and talk about it a little bit. Maybe there's some things you can take from it and put into use now and see what you think. And if you got something from it or found it helpful, or even if there's something that I can do better, leave a review. Let me know on any of these accounts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, leave comments, any of this. Just let me know how it's going. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't. I want to make it better for you guys, and that feedback is going to help more than anything. I make it a point to give you guys actionable tools to find success in your life. So I want you guys to try these things and see how they go, and let me know how it is going. I love staying connected, and I want to know what's working and what's not. And I also want to hear about the struggles. I want to hear about the success stories. I want to hear about it all. So just reach out, let me know. And if you do want to reach out, there's a lot of different ways to do it. The first one's email, which is tmailer@premierperformancereno.com. My last name is spelled Mahler. You can text or call me directly at 775-561-0056. I have the Instagram and TikTok with the same name, which is premier_performance_Reno. And then the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page, which is Premier Performance LLC for both of those. So reach out, let me know what you're thinking. Let me be a resource for you in your life and just help however I can. Don't be afraid to reach out and share these things, even if you want to do it anonymously. You can make your own email account, just send a random email and see if I can help just by posting a video online, and you can check it out and maybe it gives you the answer you've been looking for years. Don't be afraid to reach out. We need to get the help when we need the help. And that's a big thing that I want to put out here with this premier mindset is we got to be willing to do the work to get to that premier performance. It's not going to just show up for you. You have to go after it. And some of this stuff is hard, which is why not everyone reaches it. And this is why I'm doing this stuff. You just got to trust the process and trust that this stuff will work. Put yourself in that position and see how it plays out for you. It might be really nice. Next week, we're going to jump into the story we tell, the narratives we live our life by, and the things that kind of impact how we're managing our life and how we deal with things. I think it's going to be pretty helpful in a lot of ways, and I think you guys may get a lot out of it. So we'll check that out and dive into that and just be more mindful of how we're talking to ourselves and how we're leading our lives. So do what you can. Go put yourself out there. Grow that comfort zone. Try things out. If you're struggling with parenting, give these things a shot. See how it goes. Even if things are going good, maybe incorporate a thing or two. See if it gets even easier. Be the best you can be. And if there's anything I can do, don't be afraid to reach out. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you soon. We'll get back to this again next week. Have a good one.